Should athletes lift during their main sports season? They now have to practice 5 to 6 days a week and maybe have games multiple days a week as well. Sometimes lifting just doesn't feel important. Yet, there are physical and psychological reasons for why lifting in season isn't just good for an individual athlete or even the team as a whole, but the program in general over the course of multiple years. And to be clear, I'm talking about this as a continuation of an already good strength and conditioning program that's in place during the off season. If you don't already have that in place as part of the larger team culture, that's a bigger problem to be addressed separately. And if you don't think lifting is important at all for your sport or your team, please check out this video we have on the science of why strength and conditioning works for all sports. So what are these physical reasons? Well, first and foremost, the body only adapts to a continuous and increasing stimulus. Basically what this means is if you stop training directly your speed, strength, muscle mass, conditioning, your body's going to start to regress and you'll start to lose those abilities. Most high school sports seasons are long enough that significant declines will occur in those qualities if they're not trained directly. This has two major implications. Your team's performance is going to suffer the most at the end of the year when it's needed the most. When conference games, playoffs, and championships come around, your team is going to be smaller, weaker, and slower than they should be. Smaller, slower, and weaker athletes are more likely to get injured. An injury is literally just the body's ability or lack thereof to handle a specific force. The direct preventative measure is to expose the body to high forces and speeds, often through things like weights, sprints, jumps, and just more sport practice. Long-term results will also suffer as you lose progress in time. Sports seasons are 3 to 4 months long for most high school sports. Plus, there's the time spent recovering after the season and then regaining old strength. Basically, your athletes are going to spend a minimum of 5 months out of the year going backwards or staying the same. Apply that over 4 years and you spend a lot of time not improving. Whereas even making small improvements during the season and being ready to get back after it when the season ends is going to make a significant difference over a high school career. These compounding effects over time often separate good programs from mediocre ones. The next major physical reason ties in the concept of periodization. You can't just do the same thing all the time. You've got to have some times of the year more focused on, say, physical preparation, and other times of the year more focused on the sport skills. But why is this? It has to do with how the body adapts. I break this down further in this video on creating training programs. But a quick recap is warranted here. In order to overcome homeostasis, or our body's desire to stay the same, we must do more training. This applies to physical qualities like strength, but also things like sport skills. However, due to our body's limited recovery abilities, you can't just continually do more in the same thing forever, or else you're going to develop imbalances and eventually injuries. The off-season is typically more focused on physical preparation and the in-season more focused on sport skills. So yes, you might lift less during the season, but to neglect it entirely is a big mistake. And this is more than physical. It's also psychological. Dan Gable, former Olympic champion and head coach of the Iowa Hawkeyes collegiate wrestling dynasty, has a great quote. If something is important, you should do it every day. If it's not important, you shouldn't do it at all. Now, this doesn't necessarily need to apply to something every day, but at the minimum, all phases. If strength training is important, you should have it at some degree in all phases of your training. The same thing would be said about sport skills. Now, there are times of the year or in training focus when you do more or less of one of those things, but you don't neglect it entirely. Lifting in season helps build the culture around training and preparation. It sends a signal to the team that it is in fact important, even in the middle of having daily practices and big games. That signal often matters more than the individual workouts. That is how programs are built over time. Imagine sending the opposite signal. Lifting and conditioning is important in the off-season, but it's not important enough when we have practices and games. All you do is say to your team, you don't really need to do this thing. It's not actually that important. Lastly, and especially at the junior high and high school level, it breaks up the monotony. I remember when I was coaching junior high wrestling a few years ago, how much the kids looked forward to our 2 30-minute lifting sessions every week. They worked very hard during that time, and it taught them a lot of skills to use in their off-season training. The athletes will start to look forward to the different days of the week, whether it's a lifting day, or maybe today's our primary skill work day, or our primary tactical training day. These breaks often allow for deeper engagement. Junior high and high schoolers aren't professionals, and they just spent 8 hours in school. Those facts need attended to. Let them look forward to doing some different things on certain days that still help directly with their performance. It might seem like you're taking time away from something more important, but in reality, you are building the structure of what actual good programs do. They value both sport practice and physical preparation, and they do it in a way that increases engagement and enjoyment. Now you might be wondering, what the heck do we actually do with our in-season training? That's actually a bit more nuanced and complicated than many might think, so I'm going to be covering it in full in next week's video. I want to discuss the nuance between different levels of athletes, different sports, at different levels of sports, and many things in between. This week's video covered the why, next week's video covers the how. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe and tune in next Monday.